What's up, everybody? It's that time of the week where you get the tingles in the downstairs regions because there's a cracking weekend of footy ahead of us. I'll be previewing both games in the Rugby Championship for this weekend, so make sure you stick around. First up, we've got the All Blacks versus Springboks taking place in Auckland this Saturday, shaping up to be an absolute cracker of a game. Just quickly, I love how the Springboks announce their teams at the start of the week. I almost think this should be done by every team. It just is good for building hype, great for content creators, and really saves that last minute rush of doing these previews. Plenty of fresh legs for the Springboks, including big biceps himself, Ivan Etzebeth, back from a shoulder injury, rotating in for Gene Klein. I'm really looking forward to seeing him play this weekend. Hopefully he does play. There has been some really sad news for the Etzebeth family, so condolences to them. If he does strap the boots on, I'm sure it'll be an extremely emotionally charged performance. Plenty of line-out options still for the Boks, with Mostert and De Jager joining the starting side. The workhorses, Quagga Smith and Jasper Wiesed, will add a lot of energy. Mapimpi and Colby both return for the Springboks on the wing. They'll be looking for a huge performance after Curly Arunza has just taken World Rugby by storm, especially on the back of that hat-trick against the Wallabies. It still hurts. The centre pairing of Damien Dialonde and Lukhanyo Am are back together for the Springboks. I heard a crazy stat on Two Cents Rugby preview for this weekend that Lukhanyo Am's only played 5 international tests without Damien Dialonde by his side, so expect some really good gelling there in the centres for South Africa. Malcolm Marx, he's just so good, isn't he? Due for a big spell off the bench. I expect him to play more minutes than Bonambi. It's actually an interesting strategy we've seen quite a bit from the Springboks, especially under Rassie Erasmus's care. If an injury or something was to happen to Malcolm Marx, they'd be able to bring Bonambi back on after a bit of a spell. Grant Williams has retained his spot on the bench after last week's cameo against the Wallabies. I expect him to bring a lot of energy with Marnie Libok. For me, just looking at this team right now, the players who did the most damage to the Wallabies are all out of this 23, highlighting the ridiculous depth of South African rugby. It's seriously unfair. For the All Blacks, I can't tell if Foster's just trolling or serious at this point. I'd honestly love to just get inside his head for a day, for a week, just to see what he's thinking before he makes these decisions. The starting side though is actually pretty solid, and he did reward a lot of blokes who had big games against Los Pumas last weekend, so no qualms there. Retalic's also a big inclusion for the All Blacks. The wings though, it's interesting. Talia and Jordan have rotated into the side. I've seen on social media a lot of people pushing for Will Jordan to be the fullback for the All Blacks, which I totally agree with. He's probably one of the best fullbacks in the world, but Bodie's experience just at the moment, while Jordan hasn't played too much footy, is probably what's edging him ahead at the moment. Mark Talia, liability in defence, but absolute weapon in attack. I don't know anybody else who's been racking up the run meters, tackle busts, clean breaks and tries like Mark Talia in Super Rugby this year. The starting props for the All Blacks, Tyrell Lomax and Ethan de Groot, great players, but they'll really have their work cut out for them at set piece time against the Boks. Cody Taylor's also snuck into hooker after Dane Coles winding back the clock last weekend. It is important to note Cody Taylor did find form towards the end of Super Rugby, so hopefully for the All Blacks fans there, he carries that into this weekend's game. If things are going pear-shaped though, I'm slightly aroused with the All Blacks bench. Tamaiti Williams, ooh baby, the cold hero for Super Rugby this year, and Samasoni Takiaho on the bench for the All Blacks. You can bet your money that these two are going to come on and lock that shit straight down. For anyone who doesn't know who Tamaiti Williams is, you will definitely know after this weekend. He became somewhat of a cold hero during Super Rugby this season. My only big concern there is Nipo Laulala coming on off the bench. Va'i and Papali'i should be able to get on the field and do a pretty solid job, but Christie, Enor and Clark, I can't really understand those selections coming on off the bench. I don't think Christie's the second or third best halfback in New Zealand. I mean, they'll be solid, but I'm just not convinced entirely. I think if a few injuries do happen, the All Blacks might find themselves in a bit of trouble. After watching last weekend's game, I thought the All Blacks would be definitely trying to run the Springboks side to side. I thought they were more going to offer size on the wing to really make those Springbok defenders have to chase out constantly. But they've gone for really evasive, speedy wingers in Mark Talia and Will Jordan. Still, on paper, across the board, it's a really fast, agile team. I actually think the game plan will be similar to the Wallabies, just well executed. Plenty of kicks that actually have a purpose to turn around the Springboks forwards. And I think we're starting to see Foster narrow down on his final 23 for the World Cup. I think there's at least 10 players now locked into the team. For the Boks, I think they'll be wanting to play a really forwards dominant game. I think they'll be looking to muscle their way through the middle of the All Blacks similar to last week, and folding around the corner in attack, looking to create those overlaps. And we may actually see the first maul try ever scored on Jason Ryan. Getting into the stats deep dive, the All Blacks' average ruck speed against the Pumas was 2.5 seconds. Compared to the Springboks against the Wallabies at 3.4 seconds, it's almost 1 whole second quicker. I think this is really going to test the Springboks forwards and their fitness. The All Blacks offload more than any other team in the Rugby Championship, and the Springboks win more line-outs. I think the Springboks will be doing their best to slow this game down, while the All Blacks will be trying to play fast and keep the ball alive. Also, this Springboks All Blacks rivalry has become second to none over the last few years. In fact, the Springboks have the highest winning percentage against the All Blacks compared to every other nation at 37%. And looking at the bookies, they actually have the All Blacks as favourites for this game. I don't see the game playing out that way. In fact, I do think the All Blacks will be able to run the Springboks around, and I think they'll get fast ball and keep the offloads alive, and I do think the Springboks are going to be run off their feet at times. With that said, there's going to be tired All Blacks out there. They've just come off a 6-day turnaround. They'll probably be more jet lagged than the Springbok squad, and their bench could lead to absolute disaster. So I actually think this is going to be like a 1 or 2 point game, and while I really want to say I think the Springboks will get there, I think it might be a controversial call right in the last minutes, which gets the All Blacks home. They've got plenty of experience, big game players in form at the moment, and oh man, it's tough, but I think they'll just edge the Springboks out, maybe a penalty in the last 5 minutes. But I definitely won't be surprised if the Springboks go on to win this game and win it well. They do have an outstanding squad. In fact, if they beat the All Blacks really well, they can go up to second in the world rankings. And if they do pull off this win against the All Blacks, you could argue they're probably the best team in the world at the moment. I know Ireland and France are good, but if the Springboks can field two almost completely separate sides, beat the Wallabies and the All Blacks, it's going to be panic stations for everyone else at the World Cup. Moving on to the Wallabies versus Los Pumas, this one will decide who gets the wooden spoon. Vunivalu drops out for Nwanga. I love this decision. We've got a new, more reliable centre pairing. Quade Cooper has retained his spot. I know there was a lot of calls for Carter Gordon to come in after his performance last weekend. It's good to see him and Tate McDermott retain their spots on the bench. I love the way they can just come on and cause chaos in the last 15 to 20 minutes. Both Tom Hooper and Michael Hooper are out of the side with Niggles, replaced by Fraser McWright and Jed Holloway. I think both of these guys will be good inclusions for the Wallabies. Eddie Jones has made a lot of changes to his bench, and for me it's simple. He wants the blokes who come on to give the Wallabies front foot ball. They want to get across the advantage line, and while Angus Bell and Poni Farmasili are probably going to bring better scrummaging to their game, they're excellent ball runners. Same with Matt Phillip, Rob Leota, McDermott and Gordon. The only concern I do have is over Kemeny. Now, it's not like he's a terrible player or anything, but I'm a massive fan of Pete Samu, and I'm not sure why he's been omitted. You'd have to think he'd have some kind of injury or niggle hanging over from last weekend. I haven't seen any late mail on this either, so please let me know in the comments if you do know something. Now, Michael Check has made several tweaks to the Argentinian side. Rodrigo Isgro is coming onto the wing for the Pumas, joining Boffelli and Carreras in an exciting back three. Sinti shifted to outside centre, and De La Fonte is returning to inside centre. Shout out to the black jersey. I actually had a look at his review from last weekend, and geez, Lucio Sinti was an absolute liability for Argentina last weekend. He's much more comfortable in the outside centre position, so I expect him to play much better this weekend for Argentina. And in the forward pack, the main change I can see there is Juan Martin Gonzalez shifting to number 8, with Santiago Grondona and Pablo Matera on the flank. I think both teams are going to be desperate to get back into the winning circle this weekend. And when you look at the Wallabies team list, it screams excitement. It doesn't scream kick long and play for territory. I mean, we got Quade Cooper at fly half, and we got Corin Betty and Nwanga on the wings, followed by a strong centre pairing and the electric Tom Wright at fullback. It seems like a game plan that is really similar to England when they went on that huge winning streak under Eddie Jones many years ago. And while it is very successful, I don't think it really suits the players the Wallabies have at the moment. When Quade Cooper was playing laterally and throwing the long balls, I thought it looked great, but it was just too few and far between. I think the biggest change we'll see to the Wallabies playstyle this weekend is a guarantee of front foot ball. And we all know how dangerous Quade Cooper can be with front foot ball, and I think the Springboks suffocating defence is why we just kept kicking the ball away, because we weren't really going anywhere or getting any good opportunities. Looking at Los Pumas, I think they're really going to keep the Wallabies guessing in defence. I think they'll throw plenty of offloads, and there'll be a lot of running rugby as we see under Michael Checker teams. Looking over some of the key stats for this game, the Pumas have never beaten the Wallabies back-to-back in Australia, and the last time they played, they beat the Wallabies 48-17. And unfortunately for the Wallabies, they're on a 6-game losing streak. The Wallabies kicked for 942 metres last weekend, and the Pumas only kicked for 351. What more proof do you need? The Pumas were getting flogged and still running the ball, where the Wallabies just kept kicking possession away. Both strategies didn't work for either team, so it'll be interesting to see how they adjust this weekend. When you look at the Argentinian backline, they are truly dangerous. You've got Imani Boffelli, Santiago Carreras, and Mateo Carreras. All have ridiculous numbers for line breaks, tries, and tackle busts in their respective competitions. And then they're coming up against the Wallabies, who missed more tackles than any other team in the opening round of the Rugby Championship. My prediction is the Wallabies will win this game by around 8 to 10 points, just enough to make the Australian fans clench their cheeks throughout the entire game. Now, I think this for a few reasons. The first being that Quay Cooper is extremely dangerous and can unlock any backline with some front foot ball, and I think Eddie Jones has picked a side to deliver this. Throw on top of that the home ground advantage, the cool and dry weather conditions, and the rocket Eddie Jones has put up their arse. You'd think the Wallabies will all show up with a point to prove. Not that Argentina won't, and I'm guessing Michael Cheika would like nothing more than to beat the Wallabies. I just don't see it happening this weekend. Let me know your predictions below, and thanks for watching.